Welcome to the DCX Podcast, where I interview leaders in the customer experience space about how digital is changing the landscape and how you can leverage these changes for success in your business. Today, I'm excited to be talking with Dr. Natalie Petouhoff, a senior advisor to the CEO at Genesys, Tony Bates, who is also her co-author of Empathy in Action: How to Deliver Great Customer Experiences at Scale. Today, we're going to talk about empathy. Huge topic that I'm very interested in, and technology and how you can bring them together in support of building great customer and employee experiences. So welcome, Natalie.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Thank you. So you have an incredibly interesting background. I'd love to hear a bit about your journey, about how you went from being a PhD in high energy particle physics to the world of customer and employee experience.
Yeah, it's quite a journey. But I started out as an engineer, and my first job was really as a metallurgist, material scientist. That's really what my PhD was. And the high energy particle physics project was really looking at the corrosive nature of the atmosphere as you come back on reentry from space shuttle tiles. And clearly, if your tiles burn up, that's a problem, right? And my first real job was at General Motors, and they came to me and they said, we're thinking about getting rid of two-sided galvanizing. And galvanizing is that coating that you put on before you put the paint. So they did both sides of the doors. And they said, we want to evaluate that because it's very expensive. And I said, okay, I can tell you right now that without the two-sided galvanizing, it's going to corrode. And they go, yeah, go ahead, do the experiment. So good little engineer, I do the experiment. The results come back as predicted. And so I'm in the room and I'm presenting the results. And so they started to get up and leave. And I said, I'd really like to know what your decision is. And they said, we're going to go with one-sided. And I was shocked. This was my first big contribution decision that I did. And I thought I was making a difference. And I said, why? And they said, it's much more costly. And I said, you're going to have cars with holes in the sides of the doors. And they said, why are you concerned? You're an engineer. And that hit me really hard because that is like one of the first times that I realized how customer centric I am and how I was putting myself in the seat of the customer and thinking about would I want to drive around in a car with holes in the side, and I wouldn't, and that would not be good for the brand. But what was fascinating to me was at the time, the decision was more financially related than related to the customer's experience of the product that they created. So that was really my first foray. And then as you do more and more in engineering, oftentimes you're doing customer surveys, you're interacting with the customer, you're getting feedback. And so I just had this natural bent to really think about what I was doing as an engineer and how that affected that experience.
It's a challenge on a daily basis to decide, where do I make my investments? And I've seen companies that have changed dramatically by focusing on the customer, and the business comes along with it. So the organization structures around that. To get back to your book, the empathy piece, the piece where you connect with a customer and realize that without a customer, you're not a business.
I couldn't have said that better. You have two assets in a company: employees and customers. Without employees, there's nobody to create products and services or deliver experiences. And without customers, there's no one to buy them. And yet, we're so worried about EBITDA, and we're less worried about the experiences that we provide to our two main assets, that we're willing to sacrifice short-term for long-term. It's because in the American accounting principles, we've never thought of people as an asset because they do not appear on the P&L. And yes, there are a lot of layoffs. People are concerned for their jobs. But I think the other part of what came before a lot of this was years and years of emotional bullying of employees, expecting them to do far more than what they were being paid for, and thinking that was okay, and squeezing them to the point where they could barely see straight and didn't have life balance. And all the research points to a good life balance creates better thinking, teamwork, collaboration, all the things that you need to really run a successful, innovative company. But there are still people, leaders who don't think like this yet. And that's part of the purpose of the book, is to present a different economic product. So to us, empathy means sit in the seat or stand in the shoes of someone else and see the experience from their point of view. And what we find is when leaders do that, they're like, wow, probably what I just did wasn't very effective in forwarding this relationship. And if I really wanted to build a strong friendship, partnership, romantic relationship, truly seeing the world through someone else's eyes is really the key. And then the empathy in action means, so once you see that, what are you actually doing? How are you changing your behavior and your belief system and your construct? And think about it, we all buy stuff. And when you buy stuff and you have a great experience buying and the product also meets or exceeds your expectations, do you buy from that company again? Do you tell all your friends that you're going to buy and look at this cool thing, right? And when you have a horrible experience, you can't wait to share with everybody. So what companies don't realize is that's happening every single day. That kind of word of mouth, whether it's in person or online, is happening every day. And people are deciding in their hearts, their minds, with their mouses, they're voting with their feet, essentially, to not buy from you. And so the question becomes, how long is it going to take for leaders to shift out of this very ancient command and control, one-sided view? However, times have changed and people have changed and expectations have changed. And your brand is now being compared to other brands who have specialized in the customer experience. Peloton, the Genius Bar, all kinds of brands who are really solving customers' problems and delivering experiences that exceed expectations and are garnering that brand loyalty. So I think it's even more important to pay attention to this in a time where economics are even more important, because if yesterday I had $5 to spend and today I have $1, so where am I going to spend the $1? On companies that gave me a bad experience, a hard time? No. I'm going to spend it on the companies who have been loyal and good to me by providing me experiences and products and services that I want to buy from again.
Yeah.
Mark, the equation's really simple, but I don't know, maybe the rest of the world needs a moment to catch up.
Possibly. I think it's about delivering on your promise. If you're going to offer something to the market, like, to me, one of the best experiences I can have is just that what you promised me is what you delivered. And if something happens and it's not to my expectations, that you'll hear me and you'll do something about it. What I find often in companies is that technology gets in the way. Either information isn't available, or there's legacy systems, or there's not enough data, or it's siloed, or it's too expensive to make changes. So how do you see empathy and technology coming together to create a better customer and employee experience?
So what's been really fascinating, because I've been in technology a long time, and I was a Forrester industry analyst. And so my job used to be looking at customer experience vendors and analyzing technology. And when I was doing that, I would say that I hadn't really discovered the zeitgeist that I'm in right now. So when a vendor would come out with a chatbot or an SMS or some email system, we would write these industry reports. This is going to deflect calls. And the truth is that up until now, and we just entered in 2021, we just entered the fifth industrial revolution, and it shouldn't be called an industrial revolution because it is a different kind of era. And it's where machines and people and consciousness come together in a more thoughtful way. So you're right. You're absolutely right. Up until now, the technology that we've had has been very business-centric focused. It has been focused on reducing costs, and it often does that by compromising the customer and the employee experience, because it was designed to cut costs. It wasn't designed to create a great experience. And so what happened to me in coming to Genesys was this construct of what if technology was designed from the customer's point of view to, so let's take an unorchestrated experience. So oftentimes you'll try to interact with a company and you get a dumb bot that can't figure out who you are. They don't know what you want to do. They can't predict what you need, and they can't really help you, right? And maybe they're giving you canned answers, or maybe it's an AI bot, but it's not really connected to your customer journey. So they can't see where you've been on the website. Maybe you log in, you authenticate, you shop around, you put something in your shopping cart, then you go to the FAQs. That means you have a question. And that would be a great time to have an intelligent chatbot that understands your customer journey and can say, hey, Nat, I saw that you were looking at a bicycle and you picked out this helmet. Do you have a question? Be like, dang, yeah, help me figure that out. And then you have situations where the agents also don't have that context, right? So they have to ask you, who are you? What have you been doing? You have to tell them your sad story. And unfortunately, they have to listen to that and try to figure it out. And then they're digging in their databases. And oftentimes they'll have 20, 30 screens up because they don't have a consolidated view of the customer or the data. And so they don't have what they need to quickly and easily answer the questions. And so what I really saw was this tipping point, if you will. And I saw that these old technologies and the old strategies really create more interactions, and they create longer interactions. And it ends up frustrating the agents. And then that frustrates the customer because the agent can't really help. And then the customer gets mad at the agent, and then the agent wants to quit. And so what if there was technology that was orchestrated in a way that knew who you were, knew what you needed, could get you what you needed, not waste your time, and maybe even delight you? The only way to do that is if the technology is designed to see the experience from the customer's point of view.
Thinking about every step of that journey, thinking about it from the customer's perspective, I think there is a future. And I don't know if you saw the article yesterday about Frontier Airlines and what they've done, but I think there is a future where I see it more at a tier one level, where you can automate and use AI to support the tier one kinds of journeys in a way that essentially make your tier twos like super agents. They're highly skilled and they're handling the challenging moments with a customer. And these could take a bit of time, but they also shift so that because there's ideally less of that going on, they can spend more time, and it's a better investment both for the company and for the customer. But every time I talk about chatbots, somebody goes, oh yeah, I tried such and such chatbot and it was horrible. It couldn't help me, couldn't answer.
So this is the reason why you need to stop choosing technology that it doesn't help the customer.
Mhm.
Canned answers, not connected to the customer journey, it's going to end up, the intent is going to end up in a dead end.
Yeah.
And now you've lost the trust of your customer base to use what you thought was going to save you all this money, because it's supposed to be call deflection techniques. And so if you've done this, and almost all companies have done this, because again, up until now, until the last year or two, we've not had technology designed like this, not had technology orchestrated in a way that really views the customer experience in this extraordinarily different way. The truth about technology is it continually evolves. It's evolving. If you take a look in the book, there's a really cool exponential curve, and it shows how the features, functions, and capabilities exponentially change over time. And we're at a very interesting inflection point in this new industrial revolution, where the capabilities are now this combination of human, technology, and experience that we've never had before. So now companies have to make that choice to stop doing that, because if they keep doing it, they're never, ever going to earn the trust of their customers.
Orchestration is exciting and so lacking, but what's underneath all of that is data. And that's a big challenge.
It's strategy.
Well, it's strategy, but if you don't have the data to be able to get the information, move it over to the right person at the right time, all of that. I find that just data is so siloed and that companies don't fully understand how to bring it together in a way that other systems can use it and that they can build these types of orchestrated experiences.
That's true. Up until now, I would say, and again, because we're in this exciting new era, up until now, using this kind of customer data or customer information, you would need to do a data lake project. Well, here's what's crazy between social and digital. Think about every single thing you do electronically creates a data point, right? It's a customer event. So there's so many data points. So if a company thinks that they're going to clean that up and it's going to be ready, it's never going to be ready. So the key is to look for a company that you can work with that does a special kind of API call. When it needs that data, it's not actually pulling the data into the process, it's querying the data and asking a question about the data so that it gets the information, but it doesn't actually have to pull the data. And that is a technical behind the scenes kind of thing. And there are only a few companies that actually can do this kind of data orchestration. But you're right. What we developed was empathy pillars. So the first pillar is listen, right? And listening means collecting customer event data. So that could be press 1 for, press 2 for, speaking a prompt, it could be IoT data, it could be SMS, Facebook, WhatsApp. And that data, if it's collected in the right way, it tells the company who is the user, how did they get there, phone, web, and what are they trying to do? And then you take that data and you augment it with AI. And you segment and cluster it so that you can create a very highly accurate prediction about how are they feeling, what do they need, and what is the next best step for them. And then in the act step, what you're doing is you're actually figuring out how am I going to route that customer? I'm going to route them to a bot. Maybe they just need a PDF or content. Maybe they need an agent. Maybe it's a combination of all three. And being able to consistently see that customer journey, those customer journey analytics, so that if it's a bot or say you send them content and then the bot needs to know that you got content and then the bot needs to be able to answer some questions. And let's say you do still need to talk to a person. If all that is transferred to the person, then they're not starting from, did you get this PDF? Did you try that? They know, right? So they can jump right in. And then the last step that we created was called Learn, which is really looking at the voice of the customer and the employee, comparing that to business analytics and business outcomes, first contact resolution, average handle time, all those metrics that we traditionally measure, but now they have a different meaning because we're not looking at cost cutting, we're looking at experience, intent, and execution. And when the intent and the execution turn out well, what happens is you lower your average handle time, you increase your first contact resolution, you increase your CSAT, and that means that you're spending less on care, which gives you more money to put into innovation or product or marketing or wherever else you want to spend it. So what's fascinating is that there are not a lot of systems designed like this. And that's what I'm really proud of with the work that I've done here at Genesys, is that we take all the technology that you currently have and we help orchestrate it with our systems so that you're really maximizing the value of what you've already invested in, not having to have to do a data lake or data governance project, and be able to execute the kinds of customer facing experiences that garner that trust and that loyalty and that long-term customer lifetime value.
So what does it take, going back to the beginning of the conversation, where you say companies are still too focused on the business outcomes to the detriment of the customer outcomes? It's not just a book, right?
A book is a starting place, right? It's a collection of information to say there's a different way, right? But you have to actually read the book and then digest the book and do a lot of self-reflection. And one of the things that's been really fascinating for me is that I found people don't know what they don't know. So when I talk about this, I've had customers say, oh, we do that. And so then I'll do what I call mystery shopping, and I'll go on their website and I'll try to purchase something. And then I'll do little screen captures of what the experience was like. And I'll say, here's what your experience looks like. Here's what an orchestrated experience looks like. And you can see the difference. And they're like, oh, I guess we're not doing that. So part of it is creating a level of awareness about what companies think they're doing. And this is such a brand new paradigm. Like what we're talking about is so cutting edge. And I find I'll say it and then people will respond back. And then I'll realize it didn't land. Or they think it landed, but I know it didn't. And I'll say it again. And what I realized was they don't have a shelf. So it's like putting something on a shelf and there's no shelf and it falls off. And so what I appreciate about being on your show is the opportunity to create that space in people's minds to become curious that maybe there is something different and that what we're talking about isn't hype. It really is truly different.
Is there an exercise that they can do to kind of evaluate where they are in the process and understanding what they have and where they need to get to?
So we call that a gap analysis. And yes, so there's an assessment. It's the empathy and action assessment. One of the things I think is really fascinating is that as customer experience executives, we often don't call our own call centers. We don't try to buy something from our own website. And so one of the things I encourage executives to do is to call your call center, right? They don't know what they don't know. Then they don't look beyond what's there because they think that's all they can offer, or they forget that they're also a customer. They wear the hat of, I'm an executive and I need to cut costs. But take your customer hat and put that hat on and then call your IVR.
Yeah, I always advise companies from the CEO on down to do that, as well as, go into the call center, go into the retail stores, spend time there, see your customers and hear your customers in action with your agents. You'll get a much better understanding. There's a lot of empathy that comes from that, from understanding because of decisions we made over here about the product or service, the way we sold it, the way we reacted to something else in the market has caused this downstream impact that no one thinks about.
Well, that brings us back to the original story, which is how you asked me how I went from being an engineer to customer experience. So think about it takes a couple years, maybe 3 to 5 years, 10 years before the cars have holes in the sides. So there was a point in time when there weren't. And then flash forward, people are probably going, what happened to our cars? But somewhere, somebody 5, 10 years ago made a decision based on cost cutting that impacted the product and the experience down the line. And so what I ask executives to examine is, if I make this decision today, yes, it's going to buy me, I don't know, some short-term goal, but how is that going to impact the company? And I think if you incentivize and you create a culture where people truly care and they care about the long term, then you're going to have people making decisions that aren't the short-termism. And any decision that compromises the customer and the employee experience will bite you. Will it bite you tomorrow? Maybe not. Will it bite you the next day? Likely. Will it bite you down the road? Absolutely. Absolutely, it will. And so I hope that in writing this book, that 100 years from now, someone will say that Natalie lady, Dr. Nat, kicked off a revolution, a customer and employee respect revolution that really understood the value of those two assets. And it became, in 100 years, if it becomes the norm to run businesses like this, then I hope we'll have left an important legacy, at least to me.
Well, this has been a real pleasure to speak with you and to learn about the book and your perspective. I think we're very kindred spirits in what we want to see happen in the world and in business. And I really appreciate you taking the time. And thank you.
You're welcome. you.